Hello and welcome to this session on the subject of safeguarding children in nursery environments. So what is safeguarding? So in terms of a definition, safeguarding refers to the actions taken to promote children's welfare and protect them from harm. It encompasses protecting children from abuse and maltreatment, but also preventing harm to their health or development, as well as ensuring that they can grow up with safe and effective care. As you can imagine, safeguarding children is an incredibly important subject, and as you can imagine, young children are particularly vulnerable due to their dependency on adults, limited communication skills, and developmental stage. Effective safeguarding in nurseries creates foundations for children's lifelong well-being and development. In terms of the legal framework, in the UK, safeguarding is governed by a robust legislation that places statutory duty upon childcare providers. As you can imagine, anyone within these settings must comply with these requirements, but also demonstrate their commitment to safeguarding as part of day-to-day processes. In terms of legislation, here's a rundown of some of the key ones. First of all, we've got the Children's Act 1989, which was then updated in 2004. So this is the foundational legislation that establishes the key importance of children's welfare, but also introduces the concept that children are best cared for within their families. The 2004 Act strengthens this with the creation of the Children's Commissioners and local safeguarding children's boards. Then we've also got the early years foundation stage. So this is the statutory framework that sets the standards for learning, development and care for children from birth to the age of 5. Section 3 specifically outlines safeguarding and welfare requirements that all providers must meet, including qualifications that staff are required to have, in addition to policies and procedures. And then, of course, we've got Working Together to Safeguard Children from 2018. So this is government guidance that sets out how organisations and individuals should work together to safeguard and promote children's welfare. It emphasises the importance of early help, information sharing and multi-agency cooperation. There's a number of key organisations which are involved in children's safeguarding. First of all, we've got the local safeguarding children's partnerships. So these are multi-agency groups that replaced the local safeguarding children's boards in 2019. They bring together the local authority, the NHS and police as equal partners, each responsible for coordinating safeguarding services in each local area. They develop policies, provide training and conduct local case reviews to continuously improve safeguarding practice. The second key organisation is the NSPCC, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, and this is the UK's leading children's charity. It runs helplines for adults concerned about a child, and for children themselves, they fund research, provide therapeutic services and campaign for legal changes to protect children. The NSPCC Childline Service provides confidential support to thousands of children annually. And then, of course, we have Ofsted. So Ofsted is the Office for Standards in Education, Children's Services and Skills, and they inspect and regulate services caring for children and young people. Its evaluations of local authority children's services and educational settings play a crucial role in maintaining standards and identifying areas of possible improvement. Every organisation should have a designated safeguarding lead, and certainly when we think about nursery environments in particular. There's a number of core responsibilities. So the designated safeguarding lead takes responsibility for safeguarding and for child protection, including policy implementation, staff guidance, managing referrals and liaising with external agencies. They must ensure that all staff understand the signs of abuse and the correct reporting procedures. The designated safeguarding lead must also complete advanced safeguarding training, typically provided by their local safeguarding children's partnership. This training must be refreshed every 2 years with regular updates in between to ensure that their knowledge, particularly of emerging issues and best practices, are kept up to date. In terms of supporting the designated safeguarding lead, so nurseries should ensure that the DSL has sufficient time, resources and support to ensure that they're able to fulfill their responsibilities effectively. Deputy designated safeguarding leads should also be appointed to provide cover during absences, and regular supervision sessions should take place in order to ensure that we manage and we are aware of the emotional impact of the role. In terms of staff training, there's a number of key areas. First of all, induction. So all new staff must receive comprehensive safeguarding training before having unsupervised contact with children. This includes understanding the settings, policies, recognising abuse, and their responsibilities regarding raising concerns. Also, it's important that all staff have ongoing CPD. So this would be regular updates and refresher training that should be provided at least annually. This should cover new guidance, lessons from serious case reviews, and emergent issues such as, for example, county lines or online safety. Also, training should be provided in terms of specific topics. So supplementary training should address safeguarding issues such as the prevent responsibility around radicalisation, or specific training in order to support children with specific additional needs. Also, training around topics such as domestic abuse, recognising how a child could be directly or indirectly impacted by domestic abuse within their household. And finally, training effectiveness should be regularly evaluated and assessed through staff knowledge checks, observation of practice, supervision discussions, and again, the purpose here is to ensure that the training has actually transferred to individuals' practice, but also in order to identify additional support or development needs. As you can imagine, there are many different types of abuse. The first category we're going to be talking about is physical abuse. So this is deliberately causing physical harm to a child, including hitting, shaking, throwing, poisoning, burning, or scalding. This includes fabricated or induced illness, where a caregiver falsifies symptoms or deliberately induces illness in a child. Then we have emotional abuse. So this is the persistent emotional maltreatment of a child, causing severe adverse effects on their emotional development. It may involve conveying worthlessness, inappropriate expectations, or serious bullying, including cyberbullying. Again, the impact on the child is that the child will feel frightened or in danger. Next, we have sexual abuse. So this could be forcing or enticing a child to take part in sexual activities. Doesn't necessarily have to involve high levels of violence. And really also whether the child is even aware of what's happening. So activities may involve physical contact or non-contact activities, such as involving children in looking at inappropriate images or having inappropriate content which a child is able to access. Then of course we think about neglect. So neglect is the persistent failure to meet a child's basic physical and or psychological or emotional needs. And as you can imagine, this neglect is likely to impair the child's health, but also potentially their development. It may involve failing to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, or supervision, or equally a situation where a child is in need of, for example, medical assistance, and the parent or the caregiver doesn't seek appropriate medical assistance. When we look at statistics, so recent data shows a concerning trend of increasing child protection plans after a brief decline in 2022. Neglect continues to be the most common reason for intervention, accounting for approximately 51% of all cases. Emotional abuse has seen a steady increase, particularly in cases related to domestic violence exposure. Sexual abuse referrals have risen by 16% in the past year, partly attributed to improved awareness and reporting mechanisms. While physical abuse cases have seen a slight decrease, this may be indicative of the fact that in some cases detection hasn't taken place, and the challenge in identifying that type of abuse is taking place. The impact of COVID-19. When we think about COVID-19, it impacted many people in many different ways, and in some instances meant that people were in their household a great deal more than usual. And as you can imagine, that can then lead to or impact upon relationships, and in some cases can create situations where abuse could take place. During COVID-19 and in its aftermath, there was a 35% rise in domestic abuse. There was 1.5 million children in need. There was a 50% decrease in referrals and a 400% increase in helpline calls. The pandemic created a perfect storm for safeguarding risks, with children confined to homes that weren't always safe. Domestic abuse incidents increased significantly during the lockdowns, with children directly experiencing abuse or witnessing violence. Simultaneously, traditional safeguarding surveillance systems were compromised, and in some cases, health visits or visits from social workers became virtual, making it much more difficult to spot the signs of abuse. And certainly, in terms of perpetrators, giving the perpetrator more of an opportunity to conceal what was happening within the household. Contextual safeguarding is really an approach that encourages us to think about the risks that are outside of the family home, or in the case of nursery environments, safeguarding outside of the setting. So first of all, it's about understanding the risks outside of the family and recognizing that harm can occur beyond the home. Thinking about county lines and child criminal exploitation, situations where criminal gangs use children, or in some cases vulnerable adults, to transport drugs, weapons or money across the country. Also, in some cases, how criminal gangs or drug trafficking networks start to use children and exploit children for their own gain. Also recognizing peer-on-peer abuse. Sometimes there can be situations where a child may be abusive to another child. This is also known as sometimes called harmful sexual behaviour. So county lines exploitation has emerged as a particular concern, with urban drug dealers using children to transport and sell drugs in rural areas. These young people are often groomed with gifts and status before being coerced through violence, and in some cases tied to a situation, tied to a particular criminal gang. As you can imagine, effective responses require collaboration between police, education, youth services, and also the local authority in order to try to identify the children that have been pulled into these criminal gangs, and also to try to disrupt those exploitation networks. When it comes to safeguarding, one particular area that's hugely important is recognizing the signs of abuse, thinking about what we need to look for. So let's have a look. First of all, physical indicators. This could be unexplained bruises, burns, fractures or injuries, frequent injuries in unusual places, injuries with specific patterns or shapes, untreated medical conditions, poor hygiene, constant hunger, inappropriate clothing for the weather, or frequent absences or lateness. Another area to have a look is what's called the triangle of safety. The triangle of safety sits here, and it's this triangle here at the back of your neck. So it kind of runs from your ear down to your neck in a triangle shape over here. Now this is called the triangle of safety because it's a very difficult part of the body to injure accidentally. Very, very difficult to injure this particular area by accident. Another physical indicator to look for is bilateral injuries. And what I mean by that is situations where a child has an injury on one side, which is then replicated on the other. So, for example, they have a mark on the head here, but then also here. You can imagine the likelihood of that happening accidentally is pretty slim. So therefore, that would be a potential another red flag. Also, any injuries on genitalia, inside of thighs, inside of the upper arms, ears, injuries here, but also injuries on the soles of the feet, again, is another red flag. Behavioural indicators: withdrawal, aggression, self-harm, fear of certain adults. Difficulty making friends, or also maybe situations where the child has inappropriate sexual knowledge or behaviour, reluctance to change clothes for activities, stealing food, excessive compliance or people pleasing, or persistent tiredness. And these could be indicators that the child is not being cared for appropriately. Changes in demeanour. Children change over time. What we're thinking about here, though, is sudden, significant, or dramatic change. So sudden changes in behaviour or personality. Regression to much earlier developmental stages. Loss of confidence, unusual fearfulness, nightmares or sleep disturbances, unexplained decline in academic performance, loss of previously acquired skills. This could also relate to, for example, continence. And again, a child may regress to a much earlier state or a much earlier time. In terms of reporting concerns, when it comes to safeguarding, there is no fence. You're either part of the solution or part of the problem. And, from my perspective, it's important that we report concerns, no matter how small or trivial they seem. I've come across situations in the past where individuals have waited. They've maybe seen or heard something and they've said, I thought I'd just wait to see if it happened again or if it got worse. The key is if it's something which is concerning you, if something doesn't sit well with you, the importance of raising it and raising it immediately. First of all, immediate action. Reporting to the designated safeguarding lead without delay. If the DSL is unavailable, then it would be the person who's deputising in that role. If that person's unavailable, then it would be your supervisor, team leader or manager. If that person's unavailable, then we move up the hierarchy. If there is nobody that I'm able to raise it with, then I would go externally and I would raise your concern with the local authority in terms of the local Safeguarding Children's Board. But I would always try to stay within the organisation first. Documentation. Record facts objectively. I want to try to record what happened. What did I see? What did I hear? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Was there anybody else there that could corroborate or support or may have seen something themselves? Information sharing. The designated safeguarding lead will make a decision as to whether this information should be shared with other agencies. As you can imagine, there can be situations where each agency may have certain pieces of information. So obviously that goes within the realm of the designated safeguarding lead. Also, it's important to support the child. And of course, if I'm in a circumstance where I imagine that this child is at the immediate risk of serious harm, if that's what I anticipate, then I may have to take immediate action in order to try to protect that child from abuse. When concerns arise, staff must act promptly by raising or reporting to their concerns to the DSL immediately. Never promise things that we can't control. Equally, it's about expressing to the child, particularly if a child has made a disclosure to you, that you take what they say seriously. Document evidence factually, but also use exact words. So if the child has made a statement to you, then write exactly what the child has said, not what you feel the child meant. Information sharing decisions should follow the necessary, proportionate, relevant, and accurately principles. In order to ensure that information is shared on a need-to-know basis, but also share that the information that is shared is accurate, that is fair, but is also secure. It's also important to create a safe physical environment. Secure entry systems. Implement robust procedures for controlling access to the nursery, including secure door entry systems, visitor sign-in protocols, and identification checks. Staff should be trained to challenge unknown individuals and never allow tailgating through secure doors. If you encounter someone and you're not sure who they are or what their purpose is to be within the setting, then it's right to challenge that person. You don't have to challenge that person in an aggressive or a confrontational way. It's just an inquiry. Could I ask why you're here today? And again, sometimes just that open question. From my perspective, if somebody is there genuinely and for good reasons, then they shouldn't mind being asked that question. Safe play areas. Design spaces with clear lines of sight to ensure proper supervision at all times. Use appropriate safety surfaces under climbing equipment, ensuring fences is secure with child-proof gates, and regularly checking for hazardous items or maintenance issues. This is particularly important around deterioration. So as you can obviously see there in the image, we're looking at outdoor play areas, and they can deteriorate, obviously because of the weather. So for that reason, it's important that outdoor play areas are regularly checked for deterioration or breakages. Regular risk assessments. Conducting and documenting daily checks of the environment, plus comprehensive termly risk assessments. These should identify potential hazards and put in proportionate controls. Balancing safety with the child's developmental needs to take appropriate risks. And it's always that case of trying to balance risks. In terms of emotional safety, it's crucial that we build trusting relationships, that we implement key person systems to ensure each child forms a secure attachment with a specific staff member who then understands their individual needs, preferences, and family context. This provides emotional security and a trusted point of contact for the child. Positive behaviour support. Develop strategies that help children understand boundaries while preserving their dignity and self-esteem. Focus on positive reinforcement rather than punishment, and help children develop emotional regulation skills through modelling and coaching. Communication channels. Create age-appropriate ways for children to express their feelings and concerns using feeling charts, worry boxes, or other diagrams or charts that can be used. Staff should actively listen, validate the child's emotions, and help them to develop the vocabulary to express themselves thoroughly. Also, a focus on well-being. Integrate activities that promote mental health, such as mindfulness, yoga, or outdoor play. Ensure the environment includes calm spaces where children can retreat when feeling overwhelmed or in need of quiet time. Online safety. When it comes to online, as you can imagine, that we can encounter many different risks, and the first key area is ensuring that appropriate technology is used appropriately. Develop clear policies on how digital technologies are used within the nursery, ensuring that all digital activities have clear educational value. Limit screen time according to age-appropriate guidelines, and ensure that all apps or websites are thoroughly vetted before using with children. Protective measures include install appropriate filtering and monitoring systems on all devices. Keep all nursery devices password protected, and ensure staff understand their responsibility to use technology safely, including never using personal devices to photograph children. Digital literacy for children. Even young children can begin to learn basic online safety concepts through age-appropriate conversations and activities. Use stories and role play to help children understand concepts like personal information, asking adults for help, and being kind online. It's also key to develop an effective partnerships with parents. So, parent partnership. Provide parents with guidance on managing children's screen time and ensuring that online safety at home is maintained. Help them to see different resources about appropriate apps, and also discuss the risks of posting messages or images, particularly images of children, on social media. It's really about trying to ensure that the relationship between the parent and the nursery are maintained, and that each are promoting similar values and have similar approaches when it comes to online activities. In terms of record keeping, one particular area is the importance of accurate documentation. Records must be factual, concise, and contemporaneous, clearly distinguishing between fact and opinion. Document the exact words used in disclosures, observations of physical or behavioural indicators, and actions taken, including dates, times, and names of those involved or notified. In addition to recording when something took place, it's also important to record when that was recorded in order to evidence the gap between an incident and the time in which we're recording that incident. Confidentiality. Safeguarding records must be stored securely, whether physically, either in locked cabinets with restricted access, or digital with appropriate encryption and password protection. Access should be limited to those with a legitimate professional need to know the information. In terms of data protection, all record keeping must comply with the UK General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. However, the duty to safeguard children overrides data protection considerations when concerns about a child's welfare exist. Parents generally have the right to access their child's records, but this may be restricted if a child is at risk or by sharing the information would place a child at risk. In terms of cultural considerations, cultural competence is essential for effective safeguarding practice in the UK's diverse society. Professionals must balance cultural sensitivity with the paramount importance of the child's welfare, recognising that while cultural practices vary, certain standards of care must be maintained. This requires developing knowledge about different cultural perspectives on parenting, avoiding stereotyping, and avoiding making assumptions based upon a person's cultural background. I thought it would be helpful within this session to revisit a few cases. First of all, Baby P. So the background to the case. So Peter Connolly, known as Baby P, was a 17-month-old boy who died in London in 2007 after suffering more than 50 injuries over an 8-month period. Despite being on the at-risk register and receiving 60 visits from social workers, doctors and police, he remained in the care of his mother and her boyfriend, who eventually caused his death. Failures in the system. The case revealed catastrophic failures across multiple agencies. Social workers failed to properly investigate injuries, communication between professionals was inadequate, medical advice was not properly heeded, and management oversight was insufficient. Information was not effectively shared between agencies, allowing warning signs to be missed. Lessons learned. Baby P's death led to significant reforms in child protection, including stricter supervision of social workers, improved training for recognising abuse, enhanced risk assessment tools, and more robust management oversight. The case transformed public awareness of child protection and highlighted the importance of professional curiosity as well as the importance of effective information sharing. In the next case, we're going to be looking at Victoria Kalimbe. So Victoria Kalimbe was an 8-year-old girl who died in London in 2000 after suffering horrific abuse at the hands of her great aunt and her great aunt's boyfriend. Despite coming into contact with numerous public agencies, including social services, healthcare and police, Victoria's abuse went unrecognised and unaddressed. She had 128 separate injuries at the time of her death. Systemic failures identified. The subsequent inquiry, led by Lord Lamming, identified fundamental failures across all agencies involved. These include poor information sharing, inadequate training, lack of accountability, failure to follow established procedures, and insufficient resources. Crucially, no professional had a comprehensive view of Victoria's circumstances, allowing her abusers to manipulate the system. Impact on child protection policies. Victoria's case catalysed the most significant overhaul of child protection services in UK history and led to the update of the Children's Act in 2004. The creation of the role of Children's Commissioner for England and the establishment of local children's safeguarding boards. The Every Child Matters framework also emerged as a response to ensure children's holistic needs were addressed. There's a common theme in case reviews, and I thought it'd be useful just to have a look at some of those common themes. First of all, communication breakdowns. Reoccurring findings from serious case reviews highlight persistent failures in information sharing between professionals and agencies. Critical details are often lost between health services, social care, education and police. Reviews consistently show that when agencies hold different pieces of information but fail to connect them, the full picture of risk remains obscured. Lack of professional curiosity. Case reviews frequently identify professionals accepting parental explanations without sufficient questioning or investigation. This rule of optimism leads practitioners to believe parents' accounts over contradictory evidence. Effective safeguarding requires professionals to maintain a healthy skepticism, asking probing questions and seeking corroborating evidence. Failure to listen to the child's voice. Children's perspectives, concerns and disclosures are often overlooked or minimized in the assessment process. Reviews show that professionals sometimes focus exclusively on parents' needs and explanations, missing crucial opportunities to understand the child's lived experience. The child's insights can be absolutely crucial and in many cases vital to a thorough and rounded understanding of the situation. Here we've got a more recent case that took place in Stockport. So a disturbing case of child abuse has come to light in Stockport, where nursery worker Rebecca Gregory has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for verbally abusing and mishandling 4 children in her care. The 25-year-old pleaded guilty to 4 counts of willfully assaulting, ill-treating, neglecting, abandoning or exposing a child in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering. Gregory's case emerged during an investigation into another worker at the same Tiny Toes nursery in Cheadle-Hulme, Stockport. The severity of her actions shocked the community and raised serious questions about childcare standards and oversight. In terms of the offences, first of all, verbal abuse. CCTV footage revealed Gregory verbally abusing children in her care, including telling one child to effing go home after swaddling them tightly. Police described her interactions with the other children as callous and lacking proper care and compassion. Physical mistreatment. Gregory was seen pushing a child's head down, roughly placing a child on the floor and threatening to kick a child in the head. In one particularly distressing incident, she swaddled a child so tightly that they couldn't move, then forced their head down when they showed signs of distress. Neglect of duty. Greater Manchester Police stated that Gregory failed to adhere to the correct safe and expected requirements and responsibility that comes with caring for young children, demonstrating a serious breach of the trust in her as a professional, but also as a childcare professional in a setting where obviously the safety of children is paramount. But how did the case come to light? So the initial investigation, Gregory was arrested at her home in November following an investigation into another nursery care worker at Tiny Toes Nursery in Cheadle-Hulme, Stockport. This investigation was focused upon Kate Ruffley, who worked at the same facility. When police analysed CCTV footage from the nursery as part of their investigation into Ruffley, they discovered evidence of Gregory's abuse towards children. The footage clearly showed multiple instances of verbal abuse and physical mistreatment. When presented with the evidence during her interview, Gregory admitted to her actions. She claimed that the nursery was understaffed, though this was not accepted as justification for her behaviour towards vulnerable children in her care. So as you can see here, as part of her defence, she stated that the nursery was understaffed and that was a mitigating factor. She considered that to be justification for her actions. The connection with Kate Ruffley. So who was Kate Ruffley? So Kate Ruffley worked at the same Tiny Toes nursery as Rebecca Gregory. The investigation into Gregory stemmed from a separate case involving Ruffley, highlighting serious issues at this particular childcare facility. So Ruffley was jailed for 14 years in May 2024 for the manslaughter of 9-month-old Genevieve Meehan, known to her family as Gigi. This tragic case involved the baby being swaddled in a blanket and strapped face down, down onto a beanbag in the baby room. The fact that two serious cases of child mistreatment occurred at the same nursery suggests potential systemic problems with oversight, training, and culture. The actual culture, the way that the individuals within that setting worked. Again, also raising serious questions about behaviours that were being unchallenged. The police and prosecution response was as follows. Dr. Natalie Petit stated, "This was a harrowing investigation which uncovered several unacceptable behaviours and practices at Tiny Toes Nursery. We are pleased that Gregory will now have to face the consequences of her actions. Anyone who hears the details of this investigation cannot fail to be sickened by the careless actions of Rebecca Gregory." DC Petit noted, "It was clear to see that there was a culture of not challenging inappropriate behaviour, which ultimately placed several children who were under their care at the risk of serious harm. This suggests that the problems extended beyond individual staff members." The CPS, to the Crown Prosecution Service, responded. So Karen Tung, a Crown Prosecution Service specialist prosecutor, stated, "Rebecca Gregory was entrusted with the care of the youngest children in the nursery, where she had worked for 7 years. The CCTV footage from the nursery's baby room shows several instances of Gregory ill-treating the children that were in her care, and the way that she spoke to them was appalling." As I mentioned before, Rebecca Gregory pleaded guilty to 4 counts of willfully neglecting, assaulting, ill-treating and abandoning or exposing a child in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering, and acknowledging her responsibility in that mistreatment for children in her care. The case was heard at Manchester Minshull Street Crown Court, where the evidence against Gregory was presented. The court was shown the disturbing CCTV footage that had captured her abusive behaviour towards the children. Following a guilty plea and the presentation of evidence, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison, which Greater Manchester Police described as absolutely necessary for someone who had committed such offences of neglect towards young children. New challenges continue to emerge, including the impact of social media algorithms exposing children to harmful content, the growth of online self-generated sexual content amongst younger children, and increasing recognition of the links between parental mental health and child safeguarding concerns. Climate anxiety and the impact of economic pressures on families are also growing areas of concern that safeguarding systems must address. Innovations and technical innovations in child protection. Technology is creating both challenges and opportunities. Artificial intelligence tools are being developed to identify children at risk by analysing patterns in data across agencies. Meanwhile, virtual reality is being used to train professionals in recognising signs of abuse and conducting effective conversations with children. These innovations must be balanced with ethical considerations and human oversight. There's also areas for further research and development. So key research priorities include understanding the long-term effectiveness of interventions, developing better tools for assessing cumulative harm over time, and creating more culturally responsive approaches to safeguarding. There is also a growing interest in trauma-informed systems, but also recognising the impact of adverse childhood experiences throughout the life of that child, and recognising, if you have a look at the ACEs model of adverse childhood experiences, you can see that the model talks about the ways in which a child's whole life trajectory can be impacted by that early abuse or neglect. In conclusion, our commitment to safeguarding. 100% staff responsibility. Every single member of the team shares responsibility for safeguarding, regardless of role or seniority. We all have to commit to maintaining vigilance and promoting and prioritising children's welfare amongst all other considerations. 365 days of vigilance. Safeguarding is not a one-time effort, but requires daily attention and commitment. Our practices and awareness must remain consistently high throughout the year, and a zero tolerance for complacency. We must never become complacent about safeguarding or assume that serious incidents couldn't happen here. Maintaining a culture of constructive challenge and continuous vigilance is absolutely key. As I mentioned earlier on, when it comes to safeguarding, you're either part of the solution or part of the problem. And I'd like to say thanks for coming along and for watching this particular session, because by watching this session, you become part of the solution.